17 minutes. We will see if I can actually wrap it up by then. The goal of these short lives is to help people get content who never click on my 1 to 3 hour long live chats where I answer questions. Because I think sometimes it's important to know what an investor keeps in their top of mind awareness, where if we have time to go and research a subject and look up stuff, it's really hard to use that information to make a decision because we need to make 10-second decisions in real estate. Sometimes looking at a deal literally takes 10 seconds or less. So what I'm trying to do is make content where people ask questions and I answer them with information that I don't have to look up. So that helps people understand when you ask a question in a format like this, if I don't have an answer, it means it's not something that I generally keep in the top of my mind because it hasn't come up or it hasn't been an issue. So I'm going to ask, I've got a couple of questions here that I've had people send me, and that'll give people a chance to, one, see that this is happening because this is a random midday live stream that should take 17 minutes or less. And two, while I'm answering these questions, it'll give the people a chance to put your questions into the chat. And my goal is to get to as many as I can in 17 minutes or less. So, howdy, John, Texas. Todgren, howdy. Juan Villarreal, howdy. Thanks for hanging out in the middle of a work day for some people. Hopefully I'm messing with someone's lunch or giving them something to watch. I suppose I should explain the pirate outfit, if you noticed. I am a pirate minister, and this weekend I will be doing a wedding, and I'm just making sure I had everything for my paraphernalia. Regalia? So one of the cool things about being financially independent is getting to do almost anything that you want. So if you live in or around Washington, I tend to do weddings for free, as long as you're okay with a pirate showing up. But a question that came in from somebody, while I give you a chance to get your question into the chat, was from a friend named Matt, who asked, have I ever used the binder strategy twice? Meaning a second time on the same person. And how did that go? Well, it's a good question because generally this strategy for the binder is a strategy that gets a person to ask for a rent increase. Literally the tenants tell me, would you please raise the rent $300 or $250? The smallest amount I've seen is the one time I was binder strategy by the tenant and the rent only went up $155. Good move on them. So generally I buy a property that's distressed and tenants are below area average on rents. They haven't had the rents raised in years, but the property is ignored and hasn't been fixed. So I buy the property that most other investors wouldn't want. They don't want an existing tenant because they don't want to be a jerk. And our matey, thank you for that. I appreciate it, Amafid. Cheers. The tenants haven't looked for a place to rent for a while, and they don't know what rents are. And I use the binder strategy, showing them what area average rents are with literally a 3-ring binder, which is why it's called the binder strategy, and what their expectations are. As a new owner of the property, it would make the most sense for me to kick the people out of their property, to rehab it, spend $5,000 to $10,000, maybe $15,000, and rent it for the highest rents I could possibly get. But two things. I'm lazy. I don't want to do a rehab. And two, I'm not that kind of jerk. I don't want to kick somebody out of their house. I also don't want to lose money. So I show them the binder strategy, give them what their options are. This is what it would cost you if you moved out. I ask them what they would think would be fair. The concern some people have is sometimes they might ask for the rent to stay the same. It's never happened yet. Like I said, the smallest amount so far was $155. That was when they were using the strategy on me. If I went to a tenant when I buy the property and say, hey, I'm raising your rent by $100, I'm a jerk. But if they ask for the rent to go up $200 or $300 because they're $600 or $700 below area average, they're still getting a deal. They're still far below area average, but I'm not spending the money on a rehab or displacing a tenant. So it's kind of a win. But if I used it second, normally the answer would be no. Between 2013, 2020, when I was using this strategy, it was on the properties that I just acquired. And then I would let the tenants know that my actual goal was every other year, I would do a 5% increase. So they would get another year without an increase, generally. That's my goal. I don't tell them that's what's going to happen. I say my goal is to do a 5% increase in 2 years. And then 2020 happened. We had an eviction moratorium and the pandemic that hit. So rents weren't changed at all. In 2021, rents in Washington state went up somewhere between 30 and 40%, depending on what county you're in. 40% for King County, 30% for everywhere else, pretty much. So in my area, they were above 30% increase on rents. Would have been great to have some tenants move out, get a 30 to 40% increase in rent, even without doing much of a rehab, but I probably would have had to fix some things, at least flooring and paint, which is somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. Then, in the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022, I did my binder strategy on all existing tenants who had already seen the binder strategy. I think almost every single one of them had at least seen it once when I acquired the property. How did it go? That was the second follow-up to Matt's question is, have you ever done it a second time? Generally not on existing tenants, except for 2022 because of what happened in the last 2 years. My tenants saw the rents when I showed them the binder strategy because it only really has 3 things in it. The first is a picture of the property with the current Zestimate or rent or Redfin estimate of what the property value is. The second is a map of the area with all of the rentals that are for rent. And the third thing is literally pages, 5 or 6 pages of rents in the area with the same number of units and amenities like a garage or whatever you have. They saw that rents went up 30 to 40%. And I said, hey, what do you think would be fair? Generally, if I did a 5% increase, my tenants would see 75%, $75 to $125 a month rent increase at 5%. But they saw that the options were 30 to 40 if they moved. So across the board, my tenants asked for a 20 to 28% rent increase, somewhere between $200 and $400 and something dollars that they asked for. I still have happy tenants. I did have some tenant turnover. One tenant purchased a house, which congratulations, helped them find a lender, helped them find an agent, and another tenant moved out of the area. So in a little over 10 years of investing, I've had 4 tenant turnovers. 2 of them were this last year. Totally understand. But 2 out of 16 units is not a lot of tenant turnover when it's literally that doubles the number of turnovers I've ever had. Let me see if I can get to these questions. So I want to make sure we do it before we run out of time. Talk to him, show me the way. It's great. This is my good eye. So, looking for my first rental. I got 300 on it. Let's talk business. Sure. I put my email in my chat. It'll be in the chat after this video. Reach out. John, Texas. Howdy. Pirates Day. I know it's ARG, but there's something else. September 19th was Pirate Day. Let's talk like a pirate day. Victoria. Howdy. I am 80. There you go. That's what it is. Ironwood. Ahoy, mate. See, you guys know me more than me about this pirate stuff. Tony. Howdy. T-Blaze. Howdy, should I say ARG? How's it going, Dion? When does it make sense to get an adjustable rate mortgage? To me, it makes no sense ever. If you have a high rate and the rate drops, just refi. Howdy, Millennium Mike. Good to see you. You look great too. This is not what I'm wearing to the event on November 12th in California that we're going to. Maybe. Actually, Mike asked me not to, so I won't. So if you asked me a year ago, based on my experience of when does it make sense to get an adjustable rate, I would have said never. I would have said, look, it's one of the top contributing factors to the 2008 housing crash. People had adjustable rate mortgages, then you add in ninja loans, and there was another factor too. But I have a great memory, so I don't know. The things that caused the 2008 housing crash we don't have going on right now. Here's when I would consider an adjustable rate mortgage. And I actually wouldn't have unless a friend of mine, Omar, shared this strategy with me. So right now, interest rates are around 7%. And at the time we were talking like a month ago, he had a 3.5% interest. I think it's like a 4.5 or 4.7% interest rate loan product now. So it's a bit higher even a month later. So you can get it for 7 now as an investor, or you can get a 4 for 2 years, adjustable rate that then goes up 1 point twice. I think I got that right. It might go up 1.3 times. But doing the math on this, within 5 years, you'd be about where the rates are now. So if you really plan on rates going down on the future, which who knows, you would refinance to a better rate. And then you would just refinance to a fixed rate if that did happen. If your plan is to buy and hold long-term and the loan has a cap, it's an adjustable rate, but it can only go up 2 or 3 times at 1 point each. So your maximum would take you to where we are now, about 5 years in the future. It might make sense. I still don't want to do it, but the question is, when does it make sense? To me, I think that might be, T-Blaze, a time it makes sense. One of the problems we had in 2008 is some loans didn't have a cap. My loan went from 6% interest to 14% interest almost overnight. I might have those numbers wrong because of my memory problems. Payment went from 1,088 to over 1,600. So it was a decent change. Tony, howdy. How excited are you on the scale of 1 to 10 on WoW Dragonflight? I'll try. In a long live stream, I would answer with a long question because I am definitely excited about it. I have purchased it. I'm getting characters ready. I am still a nerd. I don't think I look at it as a revenue stream like I used to, but I'm excited. 8. Miss Independent. Howdy. Bruno. Howdy. For the binder strategy, would you sit down with tenants and get the rent number right away or leave the binder behind and come back another day to discuss? So great question. I've done both. Almost 95% of the time, it's the lease is with me with a blank spot where the rent goes and how many months until it changes. Because the actual, if you watch the longer video that has it listed out like a course, like I made for one rental at a time's actual course. Words lost all meaning. Your area might have a requirement on when you can do a rent increase. In Washington State, you have to give 60-day notice for a rent increase. You have to give 20-day notice if you don't want to renew the lease and you're going to kick them out, but 60 days if you want to raise the rent. So I have the conversation. We commit to making it right there within 20 minutes, and I write in the numbers and we sign the lease for 3 months from now. So I give 90 days. So I tell the tenant, look, we've agreed to an amount. They've got this mentally in their mind of this is what the new rent is going to be. And then I push it back 3 months. So they're happy. Howdy, Dave. And Ironwood. There was one time when I left the binder and picked it up another day. It still worked, still got about the same increase. One thing that's really nice is when you have small multifamily, when one tenant has set a new rent, either they talk with the other tenants or I let it slip, and that sets the new benchmark or watermark, if you're a gamer, for where the rent probably will be. And almost every time it's gone to that amount. I would say it's probably best, as long as you don't make it feel rushed, to do it within 20 minutes. Look, we've had time. Here's the comps. You can verify it. This is what, this is what your options are. What do you think is fair? It's just that one time. I think the one time I left it, it was a roommate situation and they weren't all present. So it was kind of a failure on my part, but it was really hard to get all 3 of them there at the same time. So I do think the best, if you said, what do you think is the best, is to have it done soon. Dividend Dave, how much does it cost Dion to pierce his ears? A Buccaneer. Who asked me that earlier already? That was in the mastermind group today. That came up. That's awesome. Were you there? Were you on it? I think I got to all the questions. We have another minute left. So unless anybody has a question that comes up really quick, I will answer another one of the ones that I had sent to me. Jay and Matt. Howdy. Hi, Dion. Came over here from Lumberjack. I believe you're the one that's strongly against LLCs. I got that idea from 100% financing. Have you heard from that channel? And what are your thoughts about it? I believe that you're the one that's strongly against LLC. So I'm strongly against an LLC becoming a barrier to an investor starting. I was just in a mastermind group where there was somebody, she was talking about all of her rentals this time of year, whatever one she acquired this year, she makes sure she puts them in an LLC. Don't care. She has her systems in place and she's acquiring properties. It's the person who goes, how do you name it? How do I pay myself? How do I secure financing? I can't do this. That's the concern with LLCs. So it's not that they're a negative. It's that the barrier to getting started doesn't need to be there. If you're using hard money or you have partners, like I'm a strong supporter of LLCs, limited liability companies, to limit your liability to someone else's mistakes, not your own. Doesn't separate your assets. It's a myth. So if it could secure 100% financing, I'm not familiar with that product, but if that was a way to secure lending, kind of like the hard money route, then I'm all for it, as long as it doesn't stop you from getting started or continuing. G-Blaze, thanks. One more. When does it make sense to put more money down on a deal? I have had the option to use FHA on every loan, but I did a 5% conventional because I wanted mortgage insurance to drop off without having to refinance. I did 20% down on my fourplex, even though I could have went and got an FHA because I had the money to put down. I wanted a better equity position and I wanted better cash flow. So it does make sense sometimes to put more down depending on what your goals are. If you're trying to recycle capital and grow as fast as you can and grow a machine like Matt the Lumberjack Landlords or one rental at a time, it doesn't make sense to put a large down payment in because the more money you put down, the smaller your yield becomes. But I'm going to wrap this up with this because our timer just went out. Don't compare year 10 or 12 to year 1. If you're trying to grow and scale, it doesn't make sense to put more money down. It does secure your position sometimes to have a better equity position so you can handle changes better. But once you're retired, sometimes people don't invest for a yield. Write that down. It's the only time I'm probably ever going to say it. Sometimes we invest for cash flow. If you have more money than it takes for you to live your life, and you have a bunch of money piling up and you're looking around and you're thinking, okay, this is interest rates, this is yields. I really don't want a bunch more units. I don't want to buy this many. I don't want to like to add 4 more fourplexes. I'm just looking for another house or duplex to increase my cash flow by $100,000 or $200,000 or $1,000 or $2,000. That's more realistic a month. And then you just buy the house all cash, no mortgage. That's a lot down. It's 100% down. But their goal is to just put that money there to increase their cash flow. They're not looking at the yield. People have different goals at different points in their investing. I will look at any questions that came up after this and write them down for future live streams to get them started. Again, if you want long live stream content, Tuesday afternoons, 4 p.m. Pacific, I do live streams that generally last a few hours. Thank you for stopping in on this random midday live. Make sure I'm not missing any. There we go. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.